3 weeks after my cousin died in a car crash, an insurance investigator tracked me down to a Walmart parking lot where I'd been sleeping in my car. He knocked on my window at 7 in the morning while I was still wrapped in a blanket that smelled like fast food and regret. I thought he was security coming to tell me to move along. I thought my day was about to get worse. Instead, he told me Boyd had left me $44.8 million. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process what he was saying. I was 49 years old, living out of a Honda Accord with a check engine light that had been on for 3 months. I had $11 in my checking account. I'd eaten a gas station hot dog for dinner the night before and called it a good day because at least it was warm. And this man in a pressed gray suit was telling me I'd just inherited a fortune. But then his expression changed. He looked at me the way a doctor looks at you right before delivering bad news. He said there was something else, something about the accident report, something about the brake lines on Boyd's Mercedes. What he told me next made my blood turn cold, because I realized the crash that killed my cousin wasn't an accident. Someone had murdered him, and I was about to find out that the people I trusted most in this world were capable of things I never imagined. My name is Dale Thornberry. I grew up in Millbrook, Indiana, a town so small that everybody knows your business whether you want them to or not. I spent 23 years working as an HVAC technician, crawling through attics in 100-degree heat and basements flooded with sewage. I fixed furnaces on Christmas Eve. I repaired air conditioners for elderly widows who couldn't afford to pay full price, so I charged them half and told them it was a senior discount I'd just made up. I wasn't rich, I wasn't important. But I was honest, and I worked hard, and I thought that counted for something. I was married for 22 years to a woman named Connie. She was my high school sweetheart, the girl I took to prom in a borrowed suit because I couldn't afford to rent one. She was beautiful in a way that made me nervous every single day of our marriage, like I'd won a prize I didn't deserve, and someone was eventually going to take it back. We had a daughter together, Tessa. She's 24 now, works as a nurse in Columbus, Ohio. She has her mother's eyes and my stubbornness, which means she never gives up on anyone, even when she probably should. Even when that person is her broken-down father living in a parking lot. I had a brother named Nolan, 5 years younger than me, living out in Arizona. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 years because of a stupid argument about money that both of us were too proud to apologize for. I'd think about calling him sometimes, late at night when the loneliness got bad. But I never did. Pride is a funny thing. It keeps you warm when you've got nothing else, but it also keeps you alone. And then there was Boyd, my cousin, 4 years older than me, son of my father's brother. When we were kids, Boyd was my hero. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to throw a fastball, how to talk to girls without stumbling over my words. We spent summers at our grandfather's farm, fishing in the pond behind the barn, catching fireflies in mason jars, staying up past midnight telling ghost stories. But somewhere along the way Boyd changed, or maybe he was always that way and I was just too young to see it. He inherited his father's real estate business when he was 28, and money did something to him. It made him hungry in a way that was never satisfied. He started looking at people like they were pieces on a board game, something to be moved and used and discarded when they no longer served a purpose. He married twice, divorced twice, and never seemed bothered by either. He drove cars that cost more than my house. He wore watches that cost more than my truck. And every time he showed up at a family gathering, he looked at my life like it was something to be pitied. I should have seen what was coming. I should have noticed the way Connie lit up when Boyd walked into a room. I should have paid attention when she started criticizing everything about me, my clothes, my truck, the way I smelled after a long day at work. I should have asked why she was suddenly so interested in his visits, but I trusted her. After 22 years, you don't question the foundation. You assume it's solid because it's been standing so long. I was wrong. 6 months before that insurance investigator found me in that parking lot, my entire life collapsed. I lost my wife. I lost my house. I lost my savings. I lost my dignity. And the man responsible for taking everything from me was the same cousin who used to be my best friend. Now he was dead. And somehow, impossibly, he'd left me everything. But the money wasn't the real story. The real story was what happened to Boyd on that rain-slicked highway outside Indianapolis. The real story was who wanted him dead and why. The real story was a betrayal so deep that even now, sitting here telling you about it, I still have trouble believing it happened. This is the story of how I lost everything, inherited a fortune, and discovered that the woman I loved for more than 2 decades was capable of murder. This is my story, and I need you to hear all of it. For 23 years, I woke up at 5 in the morning. Every single day except Sundays. I'd make coffee in the dark, pack my lunch in a cooler, and drive to whatever job was waiting for me. Furnace repairs in January when the temperature dropped below 0. Air conditioner installations in August when the heat was so bad you could fry an egg on the pavement. I crawled through spaces most people didn't know existed in their own homes. I came home covered in dust and insulation and sweat, and I never once complained about it. I was proud of what I did. Not everyone can say that about their work. I kept people warm in the winter and cool in the summer. I fixed problems. I made things work again. There's dignity in that kind of labor, even if nobody writes songs about it. Connie and I bought our house when we were 26 years old. A little 3-bedroom place on Maple Drive with a backyard big enough for a garden and a garage where I kept my tools organized on pegboard walls. I made the down payment with money I'd saved since I was 16. Every dollar I earned from mowing lawns, working at the hardware store, and eventually starting my HVAC career went into that fund. When we signed the papers, I remember thinking this was it. This was the American dream. A house, a wife, a future. We had Tessa a year later. I was in the delivery room, holding Connie's hand, crying like a baby myself when they put that little girl in my arms. She was so small, so perfect. I promised her right then that I would give her everything I never had, stability, security, a father who showed up, and I kept that promise. For 24 years, I kept that promise. The early years of our marriage were good, really good. Connie worked part-time at a dental office while Tessa was young, then went full-time once Tessa started school. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We took vacations to Myrtle Beach every summer. We had barbecues with the neighbors. We sat on the porch swing in the evenings and talked about nothing important, which, looking back, might have been the most important thing of all. But something shifted around the time Tessa left for college. The house got quiet, and in that silence, I think Connie started listening to thoughts she'd been ignoring for years. She started spending more time on her phone, scrolling through pictures of people living lives that looked nothing like ours. Beaches in the Caribbean, designer kitchens, women her age wearing expensive clothes and drinking wine on boats. She'd show me these pictures sometimes, and there was something in her voice I didn't recognize. A bitterness, a longing. "Look at Jennifer's new house," she'd say. "Her husband just got promoted again." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't going to get promoted. I owned my own small operation, just me and one helper during the busy season. There was no corporate ladder to climb, there was just the work, day after day, year after year. I started working longer hours, thinking maybe if I brought in more money, she'd be happier. But the more I worked, the more she complained that I was never home. I couldn't win. I was either not successful enough or not present enough, and sometimes both in the same conversation. That's when Boyd started coming around more often. He'd show up unannounced on Saturday afternoons, always with a bottle of expensive wine or some gift he'd picked up on his latest trip. A silk scarf from Italy, handbag from some designer I'd never heard of. He'd hand these things to Connie like they were nothing, like dropping $300 on a gift for his cousin's wife was just something people did. I noticed the way she looked at him, the way she laughed at his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny, The way she'd touch his arm when they talked, leaning in close like he was sharing secrets meant only for her. "Boyd's just being generous," she'd say when I brought it up. "He's family, don't be paranoid." So I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that 22 years of marriage meant something. I told myself that Connie would never betray me, especially not with my own cousin. I was a fool. The signs were everywhere. The new clothes she bought that she never wore around me. The way she started going to the gym every day after years of saying she hated exercise. The phone call she'd take in another room, lowering her voice when I walked by. I see it all so clearly now, but back then I couldn't afford to see it. Because seeing it would mean my whole life was a lie, and I wasn't ready for that truth. Nobody ever is. I kept my head down and kept working. I told myself things would get better. I told myself every marriage had rough patches. I had no idea I was about to lose everything. The day my life ended started like any other. I woke up at 5, made my coffee, and headed out to a service call in Greenfield. An older couple had a heat pump that was making a grinding noise. Simple job. I figured I'd be there a couple hours, maybe 3, but when I got there, the unit was still under warranty. The problem was a manufacturer defect, not something I could bill for. I called the home office, arranged for a replacement part to be shipped, and told the couple I'd be back in a few days to install it. They offered me coffee and banana bread, and I sat with them for 20 minutes talking about their grandchildren before I left. I was home by 11 in the morning. I never came home that early. I usually didn't walk through the front door until 6 or 7 at night, sometimes later during the busy season. Connie wouldn't be expecting me for hours. I noticed Boyd's Mercedes in the driveway before I even turned off my truck. My stomach tightened, but I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe he was dropping something off. Maybe he needed to talk about family business. Our aunt had been sick. There could be 100 reasons he was there. I walked through the front door and heard voices upstairs. Laughter. The kind of laughter that made my skin prickle. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The bedroom door was closed. I stood outside it for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few seconds. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't heard anything, get back in my truck, and drive until I ran out of gas. But I couldn't. I had to know. I pushed the door open. Connie screamed. Boyd scrambled off the bed, grabbing for his shirt. The sheets were tangled. The room smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. I stood there, frozen, my hand still on the doorknob, staring at my wife and my cousin like they were strangers. Like I'd walked into the wrong house, the wrong life, the wrong universe where something like this could actually happen. "Dale," Connie said, pulling the blanket up to cover herself. "This isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed. It was such a ridiculous thing to say, such a cliché, but nothing came out of my mouth. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move. I just stood there watching Boyd button his shirt like he had all the time in the world. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look embarrassed. He just smirked at me, this little half-smile that said he'd won something I didn't even know we were competing for. "You should go, Dale," he said. "Let us get dressed." Let us get dressed. Like I was the one intruding. Like this was their bedroom and I was the stranger. Something broke inside me, not my heart, something deeper, something that had been holding me together for 49 years. How long? My voice came out rough, like I hadn't used it in years. Connie wouldn't look at me. "Dale, please, let's talk about this later." "How long?" She finally met my eyes, and what I saw there wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame, it was annoyance, like I was inconveniencing her. 8 months, she said, maybe longer. I don't know, does it matter? 8 months. For 8 months, I'd been coming home to this woman, sleeping beside her, telling her about my day, asking about hers. For 8 months, she'd been lying to my face while spending her afternoons in our bed with my cousin. Why? I asked, and I hated how pathetic I sounded. Connie stood up, wrapping a robe around herself. She looked at me the way you look at something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. Because I'm tired, Dale. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of watching you come home smelling like other people's basements. I'm tired of clipping coupons and driving a 10-year-old car while everyone else I know is actually living. Boyd makes me feel alive. He's successful. He's exciting. She paused, and her next words hit me like a physical blow. He's a real man. Boyd laughed behind her. Actually, laughed. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, out the front door. I got in my truck and drove to a parking lot behind the grocery store and sat there for 3 hours, staring at nothing. Connie filed for divorce 2 days later. She had a lawyer before I even understood what was happening. Boyd paid for everything. The house went to her because I couldn't afford to fight it. The savings account, everything we'd built over 2 decades, was joint. She emptied it before the ink was dry on the filing. I walked away with my truck, my tools, and the clothes I could fit in a duffel bag. At 49 years old, after a lifetime of working and providing and doing everything right, I had nothing. I tried staying with my brother Nolan in Arizona. He was the only family I had left who might take me in, and even that was a long shot. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 years, not since he asked me for a loan during his own divorce, and I told him I couldn't afford it. The truth was, I probably could have scraped together the money, but Connie had convinced me it was a bad idea. She said Nolan would never pay it back. She said we needed to think about our own future. Funny how that turned out. I swallowed my pride and called him from a rest stop outside St. Louis. I told him everything, the affair, the divorce, the fact that I was basically homeless. He was quiet for a long time, and I thought he was going to hang up on me. But finally he sighed and said I could come stay for a while. I drove 18 hours straight to get there. When I pulled into his driveway, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Maybe things could still work out. Maybe I could start over in Arizona, find work, rebuild my life. That hope lasted exactly 3 days. Nolan's wife, Deborah, made it clear from the moment I walked in that I wasn't welcome. She didn't say it directly, but I felt it in every interaction. The way she'd sigh when I came into the kitchen. The way she'd whisper to Nolan when they thought I couldn't hear. The way she counted the groceries like she was keeping a tab. On the 3rd night, Nolan sat down across from me at the kitchen table. He looked tired, defeated. Like he'd already lost an argument he hadn't started yet. "Dale, I'm sorry," he said. "Deborah thinks it's best if you find somewhere else to stay." I nodded. I didn't have the energy to argue. I didn't have the energy for anything. "I understand," I said. And I did. Nolan had his own life, his own problems. He didn't need his broken older brother sleeping on his couch and reminding him of everything that could go wrong. I left the next morning before anyone else woke up. I didn't say goodbye. I just got in my truck and started driving east, back toward Indiana, even though there was nothing waiting for me there. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot outside Indianapolis. I'd heard somewhere that Walmart let people sleep in their cars overnight, and I was too exhausted to find anywhere else. I pulled into a spot at the far end of the lot, away from the lights, and tried to sleep. That first night was the hardest. Not because of the physical discomfort, though that was bad enough. It was the silence, the loneliness, the realization that I had fallen so far, so fast, and nobody was coming to help me. I developed a routine over the following weeks. I'd wake up early and drive to a truck stop to shower. I'd spend a few dollars on coffee and a breakfast sandwich. I'd look for day labor jobs, anything that would put cash in my pocket. Some days I found work. Most days I didn't. I called Tessa once a week. I tried to sound upbeat, like everything was fine, like I was just figuring things out. She saw right through it. "Dad, please come to Ohio," she'd say. "You can stay with me, I have room." But I couldn't do that to her. She was just starting her career, just building her own life. She didn't need her father showing up with nothing but a duffel bag and a decade of failure weighing him down. I told her I was fine. I told her I had a plan. I told her I'd be back on my feet in no time. I was lying, and we both knew it. Months passed. I lost track of exactly how many. The days blurred together into a gray haze of parking lots and gas station food, and nights spent staring at the ceiling of my car, wondering where everything went wrong. Then, one morning in late October, my phone rang. It was my aunt, my father's sister. Her voice was shaking. "Dale, I have news. It's Boyd. He's dead." I didn't react at first. The words didn't make sense. What happened? Car accident. Last night, out on Highway 31, lost control in the rain. They said he died instantly. I sat in my car and listened to my aunt cry. I made the appropriate sounds, said the appropriate things. But inside, I felt nothing. No grief, no satisfaction, just emptiness. Boyd was dead. The man who destroyed my life was gone. I should have felt something, but I was too broken to feel anything at all. I had no idea that his death was about to change everything. And I had no idea that the truth behind it would be worse than anything I could have imagined. 3 weeks after Boyd's funeral, I was sitting in my car eating a granola bar for breakfast when someone knocked on my window. I jumped so hard I nearly choked. Standing outside was a man in his late 50s, gray suit, silver hair combed back neat, holding a leather briefcase like he'd just stepped out of a law firm commercial. I rolled down the window, expecting him to tell me to leave. Instead, he handed me a business card. "Dale Thornberry? My name is Howard Baines. I'm an investigator with Continental Life Insurance. I need to speak with you about your cousin Boyd's policy." I stared at the card. "I don't know anything about Boyd's insurance. That's why I'm here." He gestured toward the passenger seat. "May I?" I unlocked the door, and he climbed in like sitting in a beat-up Honda in a Walmart parking lot was the most natural thing in the world. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Your cousin held a life insurance policy with our company," Howard said. $44.8 million. You're listed as the sole beneficiary." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's impossible. Boyd hated me. He stole my wife. He took everything I had." Howard nodded slowly. "The policy was taken out 18 years ago, back when you two were apparently on better terms. He never updated the beneficiary. Happens more often than you'd think. People forget, or they just never get around to it. $44 million. I couldn't even comprehend that number. I'd spent the last 6 months counting quarters to buy coffee. "There must be a mistake," I said. "There's no mistake, Mr. Thornberry." Howard paused, and his expression changed. The professional detachment faded, replaced by something harder. "But there is a problem." He pulled out a photograph from the folder and handed it to me. It showed the underside of a car, a tangle of metal and tubes. "This is the brake line from your cousin's Mercedes. See this section here?" He pointed to a spot where the line looked clean, too clean. "That's not wear and tear. That's not corrosion. That line was cut, deliberately." My mouth went dry. "You're saying someone tampered with his car?" "I'm saying someone wanted your cousin dead and wanted it to look like an accident." Howard took the photograph back and slid it into the folder. "Before I can authorize a payout of this size, I need to understand exactly what happened. And right now, Mr. Thornberry, you're the only person connected to this case who has nothing to gain from Boyd's death looking accidental." "What do you mean?" Howard leaned back in the seat. "Your cousin's estate is a mess. He was leveraged to the hilt on 3 commercial properties. He owed money to contractors, lawyers, and at least 2 private lenders with questionable reputations. His will was recently changed. Everything goes to Connie, the woman he was planning to marry." "Connie, of course. But here's what's interesting," Howard continued. "The will was changed 6 weeks before the accident. The insurance policy wasn't. If Boyd had updated his beneficiary to Connie, she'd be getting $44 million right now. Instead, it's you. Something cold settled in my stomach. You think Connie did this? I think Connie had motive. I think she had access to Boyd's car, and I think she assumed she was the beneficiary on that policy. Howard looked at me with sharp eyes. I need to find out what really happened, and I could use your help. I didn't hesitate. What do you need me to do? Over the next 2 weeks, Howard and I dug into Boyd's final months. We tracked down the mechanic who serviced his car 2 days before the crash. His name was Pete Sadler, a nervous man in his 40s who ran a small garage outside the city. When Howard showed him the photographs of the brake line, Pete's face went white. I want immunity, he said immediately. I want it in writing before I say anything. Howard made a call. An hour later, Pete was talking. A woman had approached him 3 days before Boyd brought the car in for an oil change. She paid him $8,000 in cash to make sure the brakes failed gradually, not all at once. She wanted it to happen on the highway. She wanted it to look like an accident. What did she look like? Howard asked. Pete described her perfectly. Blonde hair, late 40s, well-dressed, drove a white Lexus, SUV, Connie. It was Connie. She murdered Boyd. She killed the man she left me for because he was about to leave her with nothing. And the whole time, she thought she was going to collect $44 million. But Boyd never changed the policy. Whether he forgot or whether some part of him still remembered what we used to mean to each other, I'll never know. But the one oversight meant Connie's plan had failed. She'd committed murder for nothing. I looked at Howard. What happens now? Now, he said, we call the police. I drove to the lakefront house that same afternoon, the place Boyd and Connie had been building their new life together. It was beautiful, I'll give them that. 3 stories, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a boat dock with a speedboat tied to it. Everything I could never give her. Connie answered the door in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater. She looked good, rested, like a woman who had just gotten away with murder and was settling into her new fortune. Her face went pale when she saw me. Dale, what are you doing here? I stepped past her into the foyer. Marble floors. A chandelier that probably cost more than my truck. I turned to face her. I know what you did, Connie. I know about the mechanic. I know about the $8,000. I know you cut Boyd's brake lines. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out wrong, strangled. You've lost your mind. Living in that car has made you crazy. Howard Baines has Pete Sadler's full statement. He's handing it to the police right now. It's over. I watched the color drain from her face. I watched the mask slip, and underneath it I saw something I'd never seen before in 22 years of marriage. I saw who she really was. Boyd was going to leave me. Her voice cracked. He found out about the credit cards. I ran up almost $200,000 in debt, and he was furious. He said I was just like his ex-wives. He said he was done with me. So you killed him. I gave him everything. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. I left you for him. I destroyed my family for him. I wasn't going to walk away with nothing. I deserved that money. I earned it. You earned it by murdering him? She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The insurance policy, I said. You thought you were the beneficiary. You thought you'd get $44 million. Her head snapped up. What do you mean, thought? Boyd never changed it. The beneficiary is still me, Connie. It's been me for 18 years. You killed him for nothing. I've never seen someone's world collapse so completely in a single moment. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The police arrived 20 minutes later. I stood on the front porch and watched them put handcuffs on the woman I'd loved for more than half my life. She didn't look at me, not once. They put her in the back of the squad car and I watched them drive away. I thought I'd feel satisfied, vindicated, something, but I just felt empty, tired, ready for all of it to be over. The insurance payout came through 6 weeks later. $44.8 million deposited into an account with my name on it. I sat in the bank manager's office staring at the number on the screen, and it didn't feel real. None of it felt real. The first thing I did was call Nolan. We talked for 4 hours. I apologized for not helping him during his divorce. He apologized for kicking me out when I needed him most. We both cried, we both laughed. And when I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. I bought Nolan and Deborah a house, paid it off completely, no mortgage, no strings attached. Nolan tried to refuse, but I wouldn't let him. I told him that's what brothers do. I moved to Ohio to be closer to Tessa. I bought a modest place, 3 bedrooms, a nice yard, nothing fancy. I didn't need a mansion. I'd learned what really mattered, and it had nothing to do with square footage or lakefront views. I set up a trust fund for Tessa's future children, my future grandchildren. I donated $10 million to a veterans housing organization. I created scholarships for young people who wanted to learn a trade but couldn't afford the training. HVAC, plumbing, electrical work, the kind of jobs that built my life before it fell apart. One evening, Tessa and I were sitting on my back porch watching the sun go down. She asked me what I'd learned from everything that happened. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I learned that some people spend their whole lives taking from others. Boyd did. Your mother did. They thought happiness was something you could steal from someone else, but taking doesn't build anything. It just leaves you empty. Tessa leaned her head on my shoulder. I lost everything, I continued. My wife, my house, my savings, my dignity. I spent 6 months sleeping in a parking lot, wondering if my life was over. And you know what I realized? The only things that really mattered were the things money couldn't buy. My integrity, my daughter, my peace of mind. I looked out at the sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. Boyd never changed that insurance policy. Maybe he forgot. Or maybe, deep down, he remembered who we used to be. 2 kids racing bikes at our grandfather's farm, catching fireflies in mason jars, back before the money, before the competition, before everything got so broken. I put my arm around my daughter and held her close. I'm 50 years old. I've got more money than I'll ever need, but the richest I've ever felt was the day I forgave everyone who hurt me, including myself. Connie is serving 25 years to life for first-degree murder. Pete Sadler got 5 years for his part in it. The lakefront house was seized and sold. I don't know what happened to the boat. I don't think about her much anymore. I try not to. Some wounds heal cleaner if you don't keep picking at them. What I think about instead is the future. The grandchildren I hope to meet someday. The people I can help with the money I never expected to have. The second chance I got when I thought my life was over. If you're going through something hard right now, if you feel like everything is falling apart and there's no way forward, I want you to know something. Rock bottom is not the end. Sometimes it's just the foundation for something new. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, I'd appreciate it if you shared this video with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because everyone has a story. And sometimes the worst chapter leads to the best ending. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.